For 9 straight months, Claressa Shields walked through the internet like a woman holding a trophy she never actually won. She had the man. She had the tattoo bleeding fresh on her skin. She had the Louis Vuitton stacked in the trunk, the baby plans typed out in her captions, the anniversary post scheduled like a marketing calendar. Claressa Shields didn't just have a relationship. Claressa Shields had a whole public identity built around one man, and she was performing that identity for the entire world like it was a championship belt she'd already strapped around her waist. And then, according to what's currently being reported, he packed up in the middle of the story. He drove north. He walked straight back into Remy Ma's front door. No warning. No explanation. No goodbye text. Just silence. Sis, the woman who spent nearly a year telling us she won is now the same woman the internet is watching lose in real time. And the receipts that are dropping right now are not the polite kind. They are the kind that end public personas. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button, tap the bell, and pull up a seat, because today's story is not for the faint-hearted. To everybody who rides with me every week, pour yourself something strong before you press play, because this cup is loaded. It's heavy. It's steaming. And by the time we finish going through everything that has been reported over the last 72 hours, you are going to understand why so many women online are sitting up straight and asking themselves the exact same question. What do you actually own when the man you built your identity around walks out in the middle of the night? Let me back this story all the way up, because to understand where Claressa Shields is standing right now, you have to remember where she started. And where she started was very, very loud. For months, Claressa Shields was untouchable. Claressa Shields was confident. Claressa Shields was everywhere. Airport selfies. Gym clips. Live streams where she'd casually drop his name like it was a punchline. She was posting him constantly. She was calling him her man on camera. She was showing him off like a title belt she had personally forged with her own bare hands. And in her mind, honestly, I think she genuinely believed the fight was already over. Claressa Shields walked into this situation like a woman who had already read the last page of the book. And the internet watched her every single move like it was a reality show that dropped a new episode every 48 hours. For a while, I have to admit, it really did look like she was winning. It really did. The posts were confident. The energy was assured. The public commentary was mostly in her favor. But here is the truth about performed confidence, and I want every woman watching this to hear me clearly. You can perform confidence for a very long time. You can perform it loud enough and long enough that even you start to believe your own commercial. But the moment the performance costs you more than it gives back, the cracks start to show. And once those cracks appear, they do not seal themselves. They just spread wider. Then wider. Then the whole surface gives. Now let me walk you through what Tasha K is currently reporting, because this was not a random gossip drop. This was a full timeline delivered with dates, locations, and receipts. And according to Tasha K, Papoose allegedly left Claressa Shields exactly the way I described in the intro. He packed his bags. He drove himself back to New York. And he walked straight into Remy Ma's life like the last 9 months were a stopover, not a relocation. No warning. No conversation. No goodbye text. Silence. Read that again. The man Claressa Shields had been publicly calling her man for months just quietly ended it. No public statement. No announcement. No tag. Nothing. And Claressa Shields, according to what is being reported, found out the same way you and I did. Through the blogs. Through the commentary channels. Through the exact internet ecosystem she had been performing for since day one. Sis, I cannot even imagine that moment. You are out here posting couple content on a schedule. You are calling him your hubby in interviews. You have his name permanently tattooed on your body. And then, suddenly, the calls stop landing. The plans start collapsing. The reads on iMessage stop turning into replies. And the horrible, slow, sinking realization sets in that the story you have been narrating publicly for the last 9 months was never the story that was actually happening behind the scenes. That is not heartbreak. That is not even betrayal in the traditional sense. That is public humiliation. And it is the specific kind of public humiliation that no designer bag has ever been able to fix. Speaking of designer bags, this is where the story enters a different dimension entirely, because according to the claims being circulated, the luxury lifestyle Claressa Shields was showing off across every platform was allegedly self-funded from the very beginning. Reportedly, she was buying her own gifts. Reportedly, she was walking into Louis Vuitton, tapping her own card, walking out with the receipts, and then handing everything over so he could be the one to present it on camera. The bags. The jewelry. The chains. The entire aesthetic of being spoiled and adored and taken care of by a man. Allegedly, she was paying for all of it, and she was letting him take the credit. Honey, that is a different kind of situation. That is not a woman being chosen. That is a woman purchasing her own illusion in bulk and posting it as evidence that she was loved. And it gets darker. There are now claims circulating that Papoose had a pattern. A rotation pattern. Allegedly, he was recycling gifts. Meaning the same items would appear in one relationship, then get taken back, cleaned up, and re-gifted to the next woman as a symbol of loyalty and affection. So the bag Claressa Shields believed he purchased for her may have belonged to another woman first. The jewelry she was wearing in her posts as proof that she was uniquely chosen may have been quietly making its rounds through several apartments before it landed on her wrist. Sis. That is not a relationship. That is a subscription service with a rotating gift catalog. And Claressa Shields was somewhere in the middle of the rotation, convinced she was at the top of the pyramid. Now here is where the story flips completely, because Tasha K's most explosive claim is not that Papoose left. The most explosive claim is why Papoose left. And the reason being reported, and supported by the way this entire situation unfolded, is that Claressa Shields was never actually the main relationship in his life. She was, allegedly, a detour. A distraction. A very expensive 9-month vacation. While Remy Ma quietly worked to repair the marriage behind the scenes. Take a breath and think about that sentence, because it recontextualizes every single post Claressa Shields ever put up. While Claressa Shields was out here performing publicly, calling him her man, dropping his name in every interview, sitting in tattoo chairs, spending reportedly $30,000 in designer stores during the holidays, allegedly alone, while all of that was happening in public, Remy Ma was at home. Calm. Unbothered. Wearing her wedding ring. Focused on her family. Focused on her career. She did not clap back. She did not go live. She did not release a statement. She did not send a cease and desist. She stayed exactly where she was. And sis, she waited that man right back to his own front door. Remy Ma never fought for that man publicly. Not one time. She did not post threats. She did not cry on Instagram Live. She did not engage with a single blog. She stayed silent. She kept her ring on. She kept working. She kept building. Because Remy Ma understood something that Claressa Shields is only now beginning to figure out. A woman who actually knows her value does not spend 9 months defending it out loud. The defense itself is the confession. Now let's talk about the copying, because we absolutely have to talk about the copying. Once the story started unraveling, the side-by-side comparisons began circulating online, and they did not stop. Matching outfits. Similar poses. Identical jewelry aesthetics. Same restaurants. Same locations. Same caption structures. Same word choices. It started as internet observation. It turned into commentary. It grew into a full timeline of parallels that even the most casual observer could not ignore. And after a certain point, people stopped calling it inspiration. That word disappeared from the conversation. It got replaced with something heavier. Something more clinical. People started calling it obsession. And once you put the full timeline on one screen, that word is very difficult to argue with. Claressa Shields allegedly copied Remy Ma's fashion. Then her travel aesthetic. Then her energy. Then her phrasing. And then the tattoo landed. His name. On her body. Permanently. While he was still legally married to another woman. Before a single divorce paper was finalized. Before he had publicly called her his wife. Before he had put a ring on her hand in front of a preacher. Sis, that tattoo was supposed to be the ultimate power move. It ended up being the loudest, most public receipt of how unequal this entire arrangement actually was. Because permanent ink requires a certainty that does not exist in this story. And nothing about that man's behavior toward Claressa Shields, or toward Remy Ma, ever suggested certainty. What it suggested was strategy. Cold, patient, methodical strategy. And Claressa Shields mistook that strategy for devotion. I want to pause here for a minute, because I think this is the part that is going to sit with a lot of women watching. If you go back through Claressa Shields' posts across the last 9 months and you look at them in order, the shift is unmistakable. The tone changed. The energy changed. The captions changed. It went from confident to defensive. From celebratory to reactive. From powerful to almost pleading. That progression tells a story that the captions themselves never told out loud. Claressa Shields went from posting like a woman who had already won, to posting like a woman who was trying very hard, every single day, to convince herself and everybody else that she was still winning. The live streams got longer. The clapbacks got sharper. The posts got more frequent. And underneath all of that noise, if you were paying real attention, there was a woman trying to hold a narrative together that was already coming apart at the seams. And then the holidays hit. Sis, this detail is the one I cannot let go of. Claressa Shields spent the holidays alone. Surrounded by shopping bags. Surrounded by luxury. Not one real moment of the family life she had been performing all year long. Meanwhile, according to what is being reported, Papoose was back in New York with his family. Remy Ma was quietly living her actual life. And Claressa Shields was allegedly spending $30,000 in designer stores by herself, trying to fill a silence that nobody around her was willing to name out loud. $30,000 alone during the holidays. Listen. That is not a woman winning. That is the most expensive form of loneliness the internet has ever put on public display. Now let's talk about Remy Ma properly, because while all of this was unfolding, while blogs were running headlines, while comparisons were circulating, while the story was mutating hourly, Remy Ma was doing something almost radical by internet standards. Remy Ma was doing absolutely nothing. She was working on Lifetime movies. She was performing at concerts. She was showing up with her family. She was living. She was building. She was quiet. She never lifted a finger publicly, and every single move she made in that silence added another brick to the fortress. And here is the twist that history is going to remember. Every single woman Claressa Shields had publicly gone after along the way, Alicia Baker, Layla Ali, Amanda Serrano, every one of them, is out here building. Every one of them is winning in their own lane. While Claressa Shields' public image quietly shifted from champion to cautionary tale. In this entire story, the quietest woman walked away with the most. And the loudest woman lost the exact thing she had been trying hardest to keep. Her dignity. Now, before we go any further, I want to address something, because I know somebody is typing in the comments right now, ready to defend Claressa Shields, and I need you to hear this. I am not celebrating her pain. I am not laughing at her humiliation. What I am saying is that there is a lesson in this story that is bigger than Claressa Shields, bigger than Papoose, and bigger than Remy Ma. The lesson is that public performance is not the same as private truth. You can post a relationship every single day and still not have that relationship. You can tattoo a man's name on your body and still not be his wife. You can spend $30,000 on your own gifts and still not be the one being chosen. Because none of those things constitute love. They constitute a performance of love. And a performance ends the moment the audience gets bored. Let me take you deeper into the timeline, because there are details in this story that most of the commentary is completely skipping over, and they matter. Reportedly, Claressa Shields and Papoose met while he was still legally married. That is fact 1. Fact 2, according to what is being circulated, Remy Ma never signed divorce papers. Fact 3, at multiple points during the last 9 months, Papoose was allegedly traveling back to New York on quiet weekends that were never posted on Claressa Shields' feed. Fact 4, the tattoo Claressa Shields got was placed in a location that could not be photographed without her explicit choice, meaning she chose when to reveal it and when to hide it, and she strategically revealed it after Remy Ma made a public appearance that Claressa Shields interpreted as a challenge. Fact 5. The anniversary posts Claressa Shields celebrated on social media allegedly did not align with the actual timeline Papoose was privately maintaining. Sis, these are not small details. These are the outline of a woman who was trying to author a story that was already being written by somebody else. And here is the part that is going to hurt the audience the most, because it hurts me to say it. Claressa Shields is one of the most decorated women in the history of boxing. She is a two-time Olympic gold medalist. She is a multi-division world champion. She has beaten every woman that was placed in front of her inside a ring. She has fought her way out of poverty. She has built a career from absolutely nothing. And that is exactly why this moment is so heavy. Because none of the strength she used to build her career was applied to protect her heart. She poured championship-level effort into a relationship that, allegedly, was never going to be championship-level in return. And now the whole world is watching her figure that out in public. Let's break down what actually made this collapse inevitable, because from the outside, this ending looks sudden. But from the inside, if you read the receipts closely, it was engineered from the very first month. Number 1, the relationship started while the man was still legally married. That is not a foundation. That is a fault line. Number 2, the man never publicly declared it a marriage. He was never officially divorced. He never gave Claressa Shields a ring. He never gave Claressa Shields the public status Remy Ma held. Number 3, the finances flowed one way. Reportedly, Claressa Shields was funding the lifestyle. Number 4, the gifts were allegedly recycled from prior relationships. Number 5, Remy Ma never engaged. Silence is often the loudest signal in situations like this, and Remy Ma's silence was strategic. Number 6, Claressa Shields' behavior became progressively more performative as the certainty of the situation declined. That is a documented behavioral pattern in relationships that are ending. The louder the performance, the deeper the doubt. Number 7, the copying escalated. Number 8, the tattoo. Number 9, the holiday spending alone. And number 10, the silent departure. 9 months. 10 warning signs. And an ending that surprised almost nobody who was actually paying attention. Now let me address Papoose, because I do not want to be one of these commentary channels that lets the man walk away without accountability. Sis, Papoose is not the hero of this story. Papoose is not the winner of this story either. If everything being reported is even partially true, then he was allegedly running a rotation. He was allegedly benefiting from a woman's public performance while quietly maintaining another life in another city. He was allegedly recycling gifts. He was allegedly allowing his wife to be publicly disrespected while never publicly claiming Claressa Shields either. That is not a man being pursued. That is a man choosing his own comfort at the expense of 2 women simultaneously. And whatever the internet decides to do with that, I hope every young woman watching this understands one thing. A man who lets you fight for him publicly while he stays silent privately is not confused. He is comfortable. And your discomfort is the price he is willing to pay to stay comfortable. Let's talk about Remy Ma one more time, because I do not want anybody to walk away from this video thinking that Remy Ma won by accident. Remy Ma did not win by luck. Remy Ma won by discipline. Remy Ma understood something that a lot of women in the internet age forget. Attention is not the same as respect. Volume is not the same as value. Presence is not the same as position. Remy Ma held her position without ever raising her voice. She kept her ring on when it would have been easier to throw it. She kept her mouth shut when the entire world was baiting her to speak. She let another woman do all of the emotional labor of publicly defending a man that Remy Ma privately still called her husband. And she waited. And when the performance collapsed, as performances always do, she was still standing exactly where she had been the entire time. Sis. That is not a comeback. That is a demonstration. Now let's talk about the fallout, because the fallout is going to be brutal, and it is only just beginning. Claressa Shields is currently in a position where every post she makes is going to be dissected. Every training video is going to be watched for signs of grief. Every silence is going to be interpreted as confirmation. Every appearance is going to be photographed for evidence of who she showed up with, and who she did not. The internet does not offer soft landings for women who spent 9 months performing a win they had not earned. The internet offers only 2 options. Reinvention. Or erasure. And Claressa Shields, to her credit, has always been a fighter. So if there is a reinvention arc coming, I want to be one of the first people to acknowledge it when it happens. But sis, that reinvention is going to require silence first. Deep silence. And silence has never been Claressa Shields' strongest weapon. Meanwhile, the questions the internet is now asking are questions that Claressa Shields herself is going to have to sit with in private. Did she know? Somewhere deep down, did she know? Because there is a version of this story where she was completely blindsided, and there is a version where she saw every single warning sign and chose the performance anyway. The tattoo suggests she saw. The overspending suggests she saw. The escalating captions suggest she saw. The performance itself was, in some ways, the confession. She was not performing for us. She was performing for herself. Trying to convince the person in the mirror that the story was real. That is not a woman who was blindsided. That is a woman who was fighting a truth she was not ready to accept. And now, the truth has stopped negotiating. Let me speak directly to the young women watching this video, because if you take nothing else from today's episode, I want you to take this. The moment you find yourself buying your own gifts and letting a man take the credit, the relationship is already over. He just hasn't told you yet. The moment you find yourself tattooing a man's name on your body while his legal wife is still wearing his ring, the story is already written. You are just reading it late. The moment you find yourself spending $30,000 in a designer store alone during the holidays, the relationship you are performing is not the relationship you are living. And every one of those moments is a gift the universe gives you to leave with your dignity intact. Claressa Shields received every single one of those gifts. And, allegedly, she declined every one of them. Because the performance was too expensive to abandon. Now, before we close out, I want to address the men in the comments, because I know you are here too. Sis, I see you. And here is what I want to say to you. This story is not a woman's story. This story is a disciplined story. Everybody in this story had access to the same information. Papoose knew he was married. Claressa Shields knew he was married. Remy Ma knew he was straying. 3 adults. 3 sets of choices. And only one of them chose discipline. Only one of them chose silence. Only one of them chose the long game. And that person walked away with the marriage, the family, the career, and the public reputation intact. Meanwhile, the loudest voice in the room is now the quietest headline on the blogs. That is not gender. That is not luck. That is not karma. That is math. So let me recap the receipts one more time, because I want this list to sit in your ears for the rest of the day. A man who, allegedly, packed his bags without a single word and drove straight back to his wife. A luxury lifestyle that, reportedly, was self-funded while another person took the credit. $30,000 spent alone during the holidays. A tattoo of a legally married man before a single paper was signed. A rotation pattern of recycled gifts. A wife who never fought a public battle because she never needed to. And a woman who spent 9 months performing a championship she had never actually won. This was never a love triangle, sis. A love triangle requires 3 equal participants. This was one woman performing publicly. One man benefiting privately. And one woman waiting quietly for the show to end. When the show ended, nobody in the audience was surprised. Except, allegedly, the star of the show herself. The original always wins. Not because she fought harder. Because she never had to fight at all. 2 questions for the comments, and I want real answers. Question 1. Do you believe Claressa Shields genuinely thought this relationship was real? Or do you believe, somewhere underneath the performance, she knew all along that she was being used as a pause between chapters of somebody else's marriage? Question 2. Do you believe Papoose ever actually left Remy Ma in his own mind? Or do you believe he took an extremely expensive detour, enjoyed the scenery, and then quietly returned home before the bill came due? Drop your take in the comments below. I read every single one, and the best comments are going to end up in next week's follow-up, because trust me, this story is not done unfolding. Remy Ma has not spoken publicly yet. Claressa Shields has not addressed the tattoo yet. Papoose has not made a single statement. And when any one of those 3 moves, we will be right back here breaking it down together. If this is your first time on the channel, subscribe. If you have been rocking with me for a while, share this video with the woman in your life who needs to hear it today. Because somebody watching this right now is on month 3 of her own performance. And she deserves to know how the story ends before she spends another dollar auditioning for a role she was never being cast in. I'll see you in the next one. Before I let you go, I want to zoom out on this entire situation one more time, because there is a bigger picture here that most of the internet is missing while everybody argues in the comments about who deserves what. Claressa Shields did not just lose a man. Claressa Shields lost a brand. And that distinction matters. For 9 months, the man was not just the boyfriend. He was the content. He was the marketing engine. He was the reason the algorithm was pushing her posts into the discovery pages of millions of women who normally would not have followed a boxing account. Every anniversary post was engagement. Every gym couple clip was reach. Every tattoo reveal was a viral moment. Claressa Shields was not just dating Papoose. Claressa Shields was monetizing a fantasy of Papoose, and that monetization was working. The likes were up. The follows were climbing. The brand deals were shifting from athletic to lifestyle. And here is the thing nobody in the boxing world wants to say out loud. Some of that growth was directly attached to the perception that she had pulled off a heist that Remy Ma could not stop. So when Papoose allegedly walked, he did not just walk out on a woman. He walked out on a business model. And that is why the fallout hits so hard. Because it is not just the heartbreak. It is the collapse of a growth strategy that was privately propping up a public identity. Now, think about how that changes the math. If the relationship was a business, then the tattoo was a capital investment. The Louis Vuitton was inventory. The $30,000 spent alone during the holidays was payroll for a workforce of 1. And when the business closed, allegedly, there was no severance. No exit interview. No press release. Just a silent shutdown and a woman staring at her own storefront wondering where the customers went. Sis, that is a specific kind of pain that a lot of women online right now understand, even if they have never fought for a title in their life. Because a lot of us have been quietly running a relationship like a startup. Pouring in the capital. Building the branding. Managing the PR. And then, one day, the co-founder walks. And you realize you were the only one building the company the whole time. Let me push this further, because there is a psychological layer under this story that I do not want to gloss over. There is a term in behavioral psychology called effort justification. The more you invest in something, the more you convince yourself it is valuable, even when the evidence is telling you the opposite. Claressa Shields is a case study in effort justification. The tattoo was not just a declaration. The tattoo was a psychological anchor. Once you have permanently altered your body for a relationship, your brain will fight extremely hard to convince you that the relationship was worth altering your body for. The $30,000 in designer spending was not just a shopping trip. It was another anchor. Once you have spent that kind of money in a person's shadow, your brain will manufacture reasons to stay in that shadow, because the alternative is admitting you spent $30,000 auditioning for a role that was already filled. That is the trap Claressa Shields walked into. And that is the trap thousands of women online are walking into right now, quietly, without a public audience to warn them. This is why we are talking about it. Not to punish Claressa Shields. To warn the next woman who is currently on month 3 of her own version of this exact story. Now let me shift focus one more time and give Remy Ma the flowers she deserves, because I do not want the internet to remember this moment as just a takedown of one woman. I want the internet to remember it as an elevation of another. Remy Ma spent years, and I mean years, being underestimated in this exact scenario. When the tattoo dropped, the internet laughed at her. When the anniversary post started rolling out, the internet said she had already lost. When Claressa Shields was doing red carpet appearances with the man, the internet was writing Remy Ma off as yesterday's news. And Remy Ma never responded to any of it. Not once. Not with a subtweet. Not with a live. Not with a source close to the situation. Not with a friend telling a blog what really happened. Nothing. Radio silence for months. And here is what I want every woman watching this to understand. That silence was not weakness. That silence was war strategy. Remy Ma was executing a battle plan that only becomes visible after the battle is over. She was letting Claressa Shields exhaust herself, drain her wallet, damage her brand, and burn every bridge, while Remy Ma calmly stayed exactly where she needed to be. When Papoose allegedly drove back to New York, he was not choosing between two women. He was walking back to the only woman who had never given him the option of a public war. Remy Ma made her home the quietest place in his life. And when a man is exhausted from noise, quiet is where he goes. Now let me get into some of the details the mainstream commentary channels are refusing to touch, because if we are going to do this story right, we have to do it fully. There are reports circulating that Papoose was quietly, privately, still attending family functions with Remy Ma throughout the 9 months Claressa Shields was posting couple content. Reportedly, he was at his son's events. Reportedly, he was present for Remy Ma's daughter's milestones. Reportedly, he was celebrating family birthdays that never appeared on Claressa Shields' feed for a very specific reason. Because he was not there. Because he was in New York. Because the public relationship Claressa Shields was performing had gaps in it that only made sense if the private relationship with Remy Ma had never actually ended. And now that the timeline is being pieced together, those gaps are becoming impossible to ignore. Sis. These are not accusations. These are reports. And every one of them adds another layer to the picture of a woman who was, allegedly, being kept publicly while another woman was being kept privately. And you already know which arrangement wins in the long run. Let me be crystal clear here, because I do not want anybody to misunderstand my position. I am rooting for Claressa Shields as a fighter. I am rooting for her career. I am rooting for her to come back from this stronger than she was before. But rooting for her does not mean pretending the receipts are not real. It does not mean protecting her from the truth. Real support is telling the woman in front of you that she made an expensive mistake, and then helping her figure out how not to make it again. Fake support is agreeing with her that she is still winning while the entire internet watches her lose. And Claressa Shields, at this exact moment, has both kinds of support around her. She has people who love her enough to tell her the truth. And she has people who love her attention enough to lie to her about it. The next chapter of her story is going to depend entirely on which voices she chooses to listen to. If she listens to the truth-tellers, she comes back stronger. If she listens to the yes people, she doubles down, and the internet is going to be even more merciless the second time around. Now let me address the parasocial audience directly, because I know a lot of you have been emotionally invested in this relationship as if it was your own. That is not a criticism. That is human. When a public figure builds a narrative for us, we invest in that narrative. When the narrative collapses, we grieve along with them. That is why comment sections after breakups get so heated. It is not really about the celebrity. It is about the audience realizing that the version of love they were rooting for is not the version of love that was actually happening. And that hurts. That is grief. And it is okay to feel it. But sis, please channel that grief into something useful. Do not weaponize it against Claressa Shields. Do not weaponize it against Remy Ma either. Weaponize it against the pattern. Because the pattern is what harms women. The pattern of building an identity around a man who has not built anything reciprocal around you. The pattern of confusing luxury with love. The pattern of confusing volume with security. The pattern of confusing performance with partnership. Break the pattern in your own life, and this story stops being about celebrities. It starts being about you. So let's land the plane, because I could talk about this story for another hour, and I have a feeling I am going to have to next week when Remy Ma finally speaks, when Claressa Shields finally addresses the tattoo, when Papoose finally opens his mouth and tries to explain what allegedly cannot be explained. But for today, this is where we stop. The receipts are on the table. The timeline is documented. The behavior is analyzed. The lessons are named. And the mirror is turned toward every woman watching, not to shame her, but to save her. Because there is another Claressa Shields watching this video right now. Not a boxer. Not a celebrity. Just a woman on month 3, or month 5, or month 7 of her own performance. And she deserves to see the receipts before she spends the next $30,000 pretending she is winning. Remember this one line, and let it sit with you for the rest of the week. Loud performances are almost always cover for quiet doubts. When a person is genuinely secure in a relationship, they do not need to convince the internet of it. They live it. They do not tattoo it. They do not caption it. They do not choreograph it. They just wake up next to it. And if you find yourself needing to prove your relationship to strangers online, you are not in a relationship. You are in a campaign. And campaigns end the moment the funding runs out. Now, one final thought, because I promised you I would not sugarcoat, and I want to keep that promise all the way to the credits. Claressa Shields is going to be fine. Let me say that on the record. She is going to be fine. She is a warrior. She has survived poverty. She has survived assault. She has survived a boxing industry that tried to bury her career before it started. A breakup is not going to break her. It is going to bruise her. It is going to embarrass her. It is going to reshape her public brand. But it is not going to end her. And when she is ready to come back, I will be one of the first voices in her corner. That is a promise. But until she is ready to have that conversation with herself, and with all of us, the receipts are the receipts. And the receipts do not lie. Alright. That is the tea for today. Do not forget, question 1, did Claressa Shields know? Question 2, did Papoose ever actually leave? Drop your answers below. Share this video with the woman in your life who needs to hear it before she makes a decision she cannot undo. Subscribe if you are new, hit the bell so you catch next week's follow-up the moment it goes live, and if you are already part of the family, thank you for showing up again. I do not take a single view for granted. This channel is built on your trust, your comments, your shares, and your loyalty. And I promise you, as long as you keep showing up, I will keep bringing you the whole story, uncut, unfiltered, and unafraid. I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourself out there.